Hey everyone, my name is Rooster, and welcome back to Mechabellum. In today's video, we have the privilege of watching Zero face Mr. Dan in this particular replay, and it's going to be featuring one of the comps I think I have played the most whenever I'm playing a headbutt, which is going to be BALL WRAITH. And well, I'm going to be talking you guys through the kind of steps that are usual when playing this, what it's good against, what it's bad against, and how you kind of, move through the flowchart that is the BALL WRAITH comp. I will also briefly mention that there is a Mechabellum wiki, which I have helped work on, and you can find that on wiki.playmechabellum.com. I will link it down below, but it actually has a BALL WRAITH guide that I wrote. So most of what I'm going to be saying there is going to be available there as well. And there's other guides by other great players. So if you're looking for a tool to find information about units, cards, certain guides about what to play, you will be able to find it there. So I'm just going to guide you guys over there because I think it wasn't necessarily known to everyone that has been released recently. Either way, here we go. Now we have the privilege of watching Dan, even though Zero is the one who submitted. I don't really have a great way to fix this, but the matchup is going to be Hound Saber with a lead spec up against a aerial specialist here with the ball plus I think Fang opener, where 2 Arclights were purchased on round 1. I think that's perfectly fine. I would probably try and buy... Well, actually, I said I would buy a Hound. I actually don't think I would, because we're up against Elite Spec, and killing Elite Crawlers with Hounds is really painful, especially on round 1. And I think it's perfectly fine here to move into Wraith on round 2. In fact, you could even just skip the Arclights altogether and go for double Crawler. That probably would be what I do. Sack round 1, you're likely to lose anyway because you're up against Elite, and Elite is very powerful on round 1 with the extra 100 resources, and you kind of know that you're going to be playing the Wraith anyway. And yeah, here we already see that, right, where the Arclight gets sold on round 2 and immediately replaced by a Wraith. That is -1 deployment, and this is something that is very important to understand, is that getting rid of deployments, you have to have a very good reason to do so. And getting rid of 100 cost is typically not going to be that worth it unless you're in, the late stages of the game and you have really made up for all of your deployments across the board. That could have been double Crawler, and we're going to see that this will kind of pose a problem at some point. I think that the other side here, Dan is playing fine, goes for Fang, and I think another Hound here on the shallow flank. Bit aggressive. I think that when you're up against aerial spec in a headbutt, you probably want to buy a marksman, especially on Elite. Blue marksmen are great, and you kind of have to expect that the aerial specialist will go Wraith. It is very, very common. They don't do so. They go for an aggressive Wasp pack instead, and it does manage to get the tower. However, it means that there's no real anti-air. And that is something that you need to understand when you're going for these type of aggressive spells, is, are you sure that you win the round, even if you grab the tower? Meaning, if your opponent happens to buy something like an air unit, are you able to kill it? And typically Wasps will not be able to do so because the Wraith doesn't get stuck and is very good at dealing with untech'd Wasps. So when you pick a spell, you have to make sure that at least your weaknesses are also shored up, especially if you have 0 anti-air. You should be buying a marksman. Now, the tough bit is that the Wasp Swarm was available, and of course you want to try and deal with that. So, the player here is in a bit of a pickle. So I understand the Fang purchase, but you might as well just play, the Wasps defensively in that case and buy yourself a marksman and hope that that does enough. You can buy 2 crawlers in the corners as well, and that way the Wasps will typically just follow the crawlers and not hit your tower, rather than, sacking around here and ending up losing anyway when you spent the extra credits on the spell. Now, when you see this, when you see your opponent go Wraith and you're the Hound player, you should immediately buy Marksman. Again, especially if you're on Elite Spec, you get the bonus of having level 2 Marksman, which is a big, big privilege, because level 1 Marksmen are a lot worse at killing Wraith than level 2s. Phoenix here is just not correct, in my opinion. I think Phoenix is not a winning play into Wraith almost every time, as long as the Wraith player plays it perfectly, because there's no aerial specialization. And that is a big deal. Aerial specialization wrecks Wraith if you decide to pick it. So always go for either Marksman or Farseer. You can go Farseer if you're not Elite Spec. It's a bit too expensive if you are. And now we have the immediate, Wraith commit here from Zero. I will say that there is maybe a bit too much aggression on the shallow flank already. I am not the biggest fan of like throwing Wraith on the shallow flanks immediately. It can run into some trouble and it can be somewhat tough to defend. But overall, I don't mind the plays too much. I also think I forgot to mention that this is happening at around 1700 MMR. So we are getting in the very high levels of MMR, probably around, you know, at least top 5% of player base, if not higher than that. And yeah, I think it showcases at least a good understanding of the general placement, right? We have the crawlers, we have the chaff clear, we have the DPS. Now, we get a unit drop, and both players get somewhat built out, I'd say. There is the marksman here for Dan, and he does decide to pick them up now. So this is where the Phoenix is a bit redundant, right? You probably should have gone for this yourself. You get the unit drop, yes, but you know, you would have had level 2 marksman, and that is honestly perfectly fine to deal with those level 1 Wraith. You might as well just go AA immediately, because Aerial Specialist on the line is not going to deviate from going Wraith. It is just not happening. So always just go for Marksman, immediately go for AA if you see your opponent do this in a similar position. Now we have Wasp as well from the unit drop. That is a godsend for Zero. It is the best thing you can get in this spot, because Wasp is an absolute crucial part of the Ball Wraith comp. And the reason is, it protects you against exactly this, against the marksman. Now, it is being positioned a bit too far back, however. Zero puts them all the way in the back to, you know, defend the flanks, which Wasps are good at, but you need at least a couple Wasps to be near your Wraith, because right now, because we skipped all of those deployments, right? 2 Arclights were bought and then immediately sold. That could have been, you know, 2 extra crawler packs. We don't have those, so the Wraith are extremely exposed. You also should not be putting your Wraith this far forward. I mean, you can if you had the balls over here, but you cannot put your Wraith in front of the balls. It has to be the other way around. Now, Wraith back here is probably a little bit too far back, so I do get it, but at least put them in between the steel balls in this case. This is just far too risky, and, well, we will see that it does impact the way that the game goes. I mentioned this shallow flank happening, I guess, before it actually happened, but yeah, this is a little aggressive in my opinion. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but it might play out at some point. You can at least like work together with the rest of your army, but as you see here, the Wraith has to spawn in, instantly gets locked on by the marksman, disappears. That's a big loss of tempo. And when you're in a headbutt, tempo is all that matters, right? Staying one step ahead, creating problems for your opponents. And right now, we just aren't really doing that. The Wasps are positioned very, very defensively. They can't help out our Wraith. We go for a big flank play, which has to spawn in, and therefore loses tempo on the round it has to spawn in. And even after that, is it going to be bringing us that much? I'm not convinced it does. So this probably should have just been a round of buying more chaff and teching our Wraith. Now, we did get the Wraith tech out, but I'd rather have seen, you know, at least triple crawler here, and then just range these 2 Wraith and play around those. You can also buy more steel balls, but you have to be a bit careful about, you know, potential hacker plays. On round number 5, we get portable shield. Great thing to pick up. I think both players might have skipped, though. They did. I think it is worth picking up Port Shield on one of the steel balls, especially this one here. Since it's on the line, it can tank a missile and still survive. And if you manage to pick up the defense enhancement, which Zero has done, you get over the 5k hit point mark on steel ball. And so it can't be missiled by 1 missile alone. This would be very, very annoying for the opponent to kill here. So it's not worth skipping there. You should be picking up that item. It is one of the best things on steel ball. 8 gun now gets picked up. I mean, I love that. I think 8 gun is always what you should be working towards when you're playing Wraith. And in these type of scenarios, honestly, the Wraith will also become your DPS in a way. The steel balls eventually will too, but you don't have to worry too much about adding more large DPS units when your opponent is mostly playing small units. The sabers are the only big tanks, but you should be able to get rid of those with all of the steel balls. We also get mechanical division, which is a staple, and we do put a steel ball a bit further up, but as you can see, with the positioning, we still have some trouble here as the marksmen are managing to lock onto our wraith. And this is where the wasps would have been so useful to have. If we put them further up, then the opponent would struggle, and they currently don't have a big answer to it. Now, if the wasps were positioned up front, what should the opponent have done? Obviously, you can try and go for Mustang. I am not the biggest fan of it, because I think Mustang can struggle, but if you have level 2 Mustang on Elite, it's probably fine. The best line is usually to just mirror the Wraith, which, you know, doesn't sound amazing, but it tends to work out the best. It also helps out a lot against the mechanical division balls, so you get a bit of a 2-for-1, where going for your own Wraith counters the enemy wasps, you know, makes the enemy Wraith more exposed to your marksman, and then also clears the path with the steel balls now having mechanical division. Round number 6, Photon Emission shows up. Great spell to pick up right now. You don't have to, though. You can skip as well. Zero decides to go for the enhancement module. Again, I wouldn't really go for this. Enhancement module is a powerful card, and it can be really good on aerial spec because you have access to Overlord, but you're not looking to go Overlord in this comp unless there is a real reason to. Unless you're getting EMP'd by a spell, typically, or they're trying to EMP your steel balls, that is when you pick up the Overlord to go Photon Coating. But other than that, you do not need Overlords. And why am I mentioning them? Because Overlord is the best unit to use Enhancement Module with. Using it on 100 costs, or 100 upgrade costs on a steel balls is not great. And the problem is, you're going to struggle to replace them. This is, again, a little bit of this you know, making use of your deployment thing. We talked about it earlier with getting rid of the arc lights, right? And then selling them, which is -2 deployments that you're not going to get back. The same thing applies to Enhancement Module. Anytime you level something with Enhancement Module and decide to sell it, you make a profit, but you also lose a deployment. And that is fine if you're getting 250 resources because you leveled up an Overlord. But if you're leveling up 100 costs, left, right, center, you're going to find out that your board is extremely empty at some point. So it's not really worth doing on the 200 costs. It's only really worth doing if you have easy access to giants and you plan on playing them on your board. So here, I would not have gone for that. We get the Photon Coating here for Dan, which is perfectly fine. We also get a bit of an aggressive play on the left side. I would have paired this with a steel ball and positioned it more aggressively if that is what we're going to be doing. But here, again, we're not responding to the right side adequately, right? We're going for a play on the left, but it's pretty slow if it's just a Wraith. In fact, you can see the fight's already over, and that's often going to be something you have to think about when you're playing a headbutt, is the fight happens very quick. It immediately starts when the round begins. So you have to, when you go for these type of plays, be able to secure the tower very, very quickly. And that won't happen with just a lone Wraith. Unless you position it literally on the line with a mobile beacon. So here again, you know, we see some struggles. And now Zero is starting to get down to 2,000 hit points. And the opponent is still very, very healthy. Which can become a little bit daunting when you're up against Elite Spec. Because, you know, the Specialist scales rather well. Round number 7. Overlord is shown in the unit drops. And so here is the pitfall that I was warning about. Zero picks up Overlord. Now, I have no massive issue with that. You can, you know, play one just in case you might need it for Photon Coating at some point. However, right now, there is no reason for that. There is no threat to the Steel Balls or the Wraith that are going to get EMP'd, and the Overlord doesn't add anything that we're lacking. We don't need the bonus DPS. We have 8-gun Wraith. We can just go second attack enhancement if we want to. We have massive amounts of Steel Balls, and if anything, it's really vulnerable to the marksman as well. So what we need here is, again, those wasps. And the slightly criminal thing, you know, I'm going to say that, is that we sold our wasps. This is really not something that you're allowed to do in this comp. The wasps are by far your most useful piece of chaff right now, especially after having sold a whole bunch of your chaff, and now we're just relying on steel balls. Now, thankfully, the opponent hasn't really answered the steel balls very well, so we do get to make fantastic use of their mechanical division, but they're going to be struggling to, you know, tank long enough for every single wraith. Some of them are gonna get caught. And on the right side here, we have a decent flank going, but you can see 2 missiles, right, being spent by the opponent to instantly kill this and open up that wraith. Now, this one actually manages to kind of sit in the corner safely, but its brother does end up going down rapidly. And yeah, we just get overwhelmed. Right? The overlords aren't doing much. They did okay damage, but this is where you probably should have just, you know, either taken the overlord and sold it, and then you have it unlocked. But we're aerial specialists, so we could have gotten the unlock for free anyway. I probably would have gone for Farseer, sold one of them, and then used the money to make our wraith stronger, get levels, get second attack enhancement, make sure you click temp range, and buy wasps. The main thing that we're missing here is just there's no deployments to deal with the enemy DPS, right? The board is rather empty. We have 2 fangs and then 5 steel balls, and we just keep selling way too much. I think that at the beginner level, the problem is often that we're not selling enough. We keep units on the board that are untech'd and that are not doing anything. But I think that once you get to, you know, on the brink of getting towards the 1800s, 1900s, 2K, sometimes there might be a little bit of selling too much. Thinking that a unit doesn't do anything because it's a steel ball all the way in the back. Or because, you know, you bought arc lights on round 1 and you want to now replace them with wraith. Those units do have a function in that they are just there on the board and need to be killed. You can't really be getting rid of those. You can get rid of, you know, less important units or units that are worth a bit more, but at some point you're just going to be shooting yourself in the foot because you just, yeah, you have nothing left on the board. So yeah, your wraith are very powerful, and the matchup is fantastic here. Wraith will win this, but not if they get instantly locked onto. Opponent, by the way, went for the Fire Badgers with the Scorching Charge tech. Very nice job by them. I think that is a great thing to do. It is one of the ways to try and deal with all of these steel balls, you know, when they explode and the mechanical division crawlers go out. Opponent here tries to, or Zero rather, goes for more boats, picks up Overlord Artillery, and buys even more Wraith, which does end up doing very well. He also linked the steel balls. Now, I don't think linking is necessarily, you know, mandatory here. You probably do just as well without. But again, the main thing here that would, you know, allow Zero to keep winning would be those wasps. Round number 9, we get Nuke, and this is why late game can get a bit scary sometimes for air-based boards. You do have to deal with these red spells showing up more often. Nuke here gets picked up for Dan, and we go for the Orbital Javelin for Zero. I think that is a perfectly fine choice. You do have some decent targets. It's a cheaper spell, and you can just get rid of one of the important marksmen here. It is perfectly fine to pick up a Javelin to kill some 100 cost units if those 100 cost units are, you know, carrying the whole game. So do be aware of that. Now, what do you do here with the Nuke? You can expect that the Nuke will get picked because it's very powerful against Wraith and Overlord, which are hard to, you know, defend. I mean, you cannot protect them against the Nuke. You just have to avoid the Nuke. So what is being done here, I like. I think this is very smart. You should try and avoid the right side. And stuff is being added now on the left. We have the Steel Ball that I mentioned earlier with a Wraith and an Overlord right behind, beaconed into the tower. I would probably have saved that beacon to try and beacon some of my stuff here away, right? Beacon this pack of units over to the left. And then redeploy we can use as well to move another unit over to the left. And we can basically move our entire army, or at least a big portion of it, over to the other side of the board. A very, very common play here. When you're into air, playing aggressive, and, you know, Storm shows up or Nuke shows up, is using the beacon to get out of, you know, where your army is positioned the round prior. Bit of a flank coming in here. Doesn't end up working too well, as there are some fangs to protect. And now Zero is starting to make a comeback. His board is being stabilized. He finally seems to have enough steel balls. And, well, you can see the power of, you know, the Ball Wraith comp, even without the Wasps. Now, Wasp is back available. We also have Photon Emission here for Dan. Another unit reinforcement comes in. And we go for the Mountain for Zero. And the Sledgehammers are being picked up for Dan. I don't mind the Sledgehammers too much. I think that they are a very useful thing to use against, you know, Wraith and Balls. Typically, both units tend to struggle, especially when the Sledgehammers are high level. I wouldn't mind going for field maintenance here. It just amps up their tankiness, and they may be able to survive a bit longer, buying you that crucial time to, well, hopefully lock on to the enemy units. We do have those Hounds, of course. They are high level, triple teched. The problem is that they sometimes will get caught by one of the guns of the Wraith, and suddenly your chaff clear is gone. So this is really where I would recommend, as the defensive player, you should just have your own Wraith. That is the easiest way to deal with this. You can also go for some hackers, which is not a bad idea, again, into the Mechanical Division Steel Balls. If it actually goes up to around 9 or 10, I would add hackers to the field as well. So typically the board will indeed look like something like Sledgehammers or Badgers, the stall, whatever your main chaff clear unit is, up until you buy Wraith. Of course, AA Marksman or AA Farseer. And then hackers kind of as a final puzzle piece often to try and deal with the Mechanical Division Steel Balls, and again, buy you a little bit more time. We get this Mountain with the Saturation Bombardment tech. It's fine. I don't think it's worth the investment, to be honest. Mechabellum is really a game where you benefit a lot from teching certain units and then buying more of them to get even more value out of the techs that you bought. So diversifying the board, unless you have a really good reason to, is usually not worth it. And you can see here that suddenly Zero starts losing again. And once more, the real thing that you should be going for here is buying those Wasps, right? The opponent has not respected it whatsoever. There are no Mustangs, no Wraith. The Wasp is the crucial piece of chaff here to try and brick these marksmen. And you can position them aggressively. They don't have to be all the way in the back. Don't be afraid, right, to put them at the front, especially if there's a crawler or a fang to protect them. They won't be able to get missiled. Now, we get the Ion Beam on round number 11, a little bit scary. Same thing here again, one of the other red spells I didn't mention, but you can expect it to be used on the right side. And because you know that, hey, you can sell this, transfer the module that you have, the enhancement module, onto this other Overlord. You can beacon this pack of units back, and you should be able to save most of your army. You even have a redeploy as well. So very easy to get out of. EMP is picked up for Zero. I would not be doing that. I think you kind of have to go for the Ion Beam as well. It's just too powerful of a spell. You have to pick it. It's good at breaking shields too. It's just, yeah, this is not up for debate. I think in these situations, you just have to run that Ion Beam across the enemy marksman. The EMP is decent, especially because the opponent completely forgets the shield here. They have no money left, and they should be doing that first. One of the other things you have to think about is, was there a spell, and what do I absolutely need to do before I do the rest of my turn? Oftentimes when it gets this late, it's loaning first, getting temp range, often even getting temp speed, and buying those bubbles if spells were offered. Ion Beam here, kind of running through a lot of the enemy units. Did not use, right, our ability to move. But the steel balls are kind of getting out of control here. And it looks like we do manage to overwhelm. The Mountain also stays alive and does a good amount of damage. So after 11 rounds, Zero manages to stabilize. And he will be winning. But it was a bit laborsome, right? And I explain exactly why it was. So if we go through the rounds here, round 1 deployment, very standard stuff here from Dan. I wouldn't really change anything about this. I think this is solid, very, very good. Over here, I would likely, if you are aerial spec and you're expecting a headbutt, just sack the arc lights. We don't care about them. Just buy double crawler. You will lose the round anyway. You're up against elites. Just play for your wraith, and the crawlers will always be useful later because, well, they can protect your air unit. If we move on a little bit more, we finally buy the wraith. Do not sell the arc lights here, right? Put the wraith in between the steel balls, but keep your arc lights if you bought them. It is not worth getting rid of them, and they will at least tank a shot, right? From the sabers or a couple shots from the hounds, whatever. They buy you some time, and otherwise your board just becomes far too empty. If you are on the receiving side, on round number 3 or 2, where the wasp was picked up, we have to buy a marksman here. We just have to. You can buy a phoenix as well if you're not elite spec, but if you are elite spec, you have to buy a marksman. Because you are up against the aerial spec and a headbutt, they will buy a wraith. So do keep that in mind. Once you see the wraith or you forgot to buy the marksman, it's no big deal, but then you need to buy the marksman. We cannot be buying a phoenix. It does win us the round, but it doesn't scale nearly as well. Round 4, we get this unit drop. Very good. We pick up the marksman anyway, so a bit of a loss of tempo there, right, on the phoenix purchase because there's overlap in rolls. We pick up the wasps as the wraith player. Again, this is the best case scenario for the wraith player, but you cannot be putting your wasps that far back. I'm okay with putting one of them over here, as long as it's on the line of the tower. It will still turn if there is a flank. So put it a little bit further up. This second pack, it cannot be in the back. It has to be over here. Even in between the wraith, can even be poking out a little bit because you have the fangs anyway to protect. This type of aggressive flank you can go for, but it's kind of at your own risk, right? You are losing tempo. With the wasps, you probably gained enough that you can justify doing this, but you would have to position the wasps in the correct spot. This type of play with the wasps all the way in the back, it is just far too passive. We cannot be having that. If you're very scared, you can level up this left side tower, but you have a fang there anyway. So, you know, just level this once and use this on the right side. Early on in these headbutts, it is very important to stabilize your comp and get ahead. And you will not get ahead if you put all of your units in the back. You have to be a little bit greedy with your positioning. So like semi-defending the flank, but also putting it in a spot where it can actually like contribute in time. If you see your opponent pick up wasps as, you know, the player that is not playing Wraith, you have to go for Wraith yourself. It's a bit boring, but it works the best. It also protects you against Mechanical Division Steel Balls. So that is the important thing there. You can go for Mustang if you want to, but Mustang are not as good into Steel Ball. They're not great into the crawlers that pop out of them. So Wraith is just your most solid option. Mechanical Division Steel Ball is a staple. Aside from the wasps, you know, everything in this comp is to try and defend your Wraith for as long as possible. So both the wasps and the Mechanical Division Steel Balls are there to do that. Double teching Wraith, fantastic. Great. Try and get into this tech as fast as you can, right? You can just pump a level into this left side tower. You don't have to worry too much. Do not sell your wasps. Retrieve it. You have redeploy, right? Wasps are very important. We cannot be selling things. Do not sell your arc lights if you bought them. Do not sell this steel ball in the back. It is very important. Do not sell your wasps, right? You can sell your buildings. I'm okay with that. You can sell your unit reinforcements if they're not useful. That's all fine and dandy, but yeah, we cannot be selling our chaff. So let's take over here on round 7 because this is kind of one, I think, impactful round where we have to realize that, okay, we're aerial specialists, so we unlock Overlord for free. That means that this unit drop is not as important for us. The Farseer is worth the most. It is 600 total, and it's free. So that sells for the most. So we can sell one of them now, and we can use the other one on the right side. We went for an aggressive play on the right side, so we have to expect that our opponent is going to be retaliating. So let's use the redeploy to be a bit flexible and move over here, right? I'm going to pump one level into the tower 2. This way we should be somewhat fine. I doubt that they'll be very heavily attacking. If they are and we lose the round, I mean, so be it. But this should at least be somewhat adequate. We have a Farseer to help out. We have a Wraith to chaff clear. And now they're not as exposed, so the opponent is the one that has to move in. if they decide to go for a play. Aside from that, we can go for double attack enhancement. We can go for double defense enhancement. We do not have to link our steel balls. They are pretty much as useful with or without, because the sabers will take longer to kill them individually. So that saves us some money. We need temp range. We absolutely do, and we absolutely need wasp. So let's buy 3 of those and position them in a spot where they can help us out. So let's do something like this, and this, and this. This cannot get missiled. This marksman will get distracted, and so this wraith will survive for longer. And I mean, at this point, we're pretty much done. Like, my round is over. This is protected adequately. I can do whatever I want here. I could shield my wasps if I want to, and just send it. Opponent goes for those fire badgers. Decent play. But, I mean, as you can see, right, their marksmen are just going to get stuck on our wasps for an eternity, and this will be a very convincing round win. At this point, you would basically have finished your board of Ball Wraith, and you can just keep buying the same stuff over and over, right? You can go for your aggressive play on the right again if you want to. The opponent decided to just kind of level their tower, and you can see that you would do a ton of damage. 2,000 player damage on round 7. If we go back to watch the replay, opponent was at full health, and on round number 8, we were the ones that took 400 damage. So this would have been a very, very big swing, and it wouldn't have taken us as long to stabilize where we went for the overlords, right? This is just a last second type of thing. Now, obviously, we took the enhancement module, which is very greedy, and it did work out because we went into overlords and we didn't end up dying. So we got a lot of value out of it, right? Selling, making profit, buying them elsewhere. Eventually, you will stabilize, but, you know, if the opponent here goes for some Wraith at some point, I imagine it would have gone, you know, very, very differently. Anyway, if you liked this video, please leave a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments what you thought about it. Was this helpful? And yeah, be sure to check out the wiki, link down below, if you're interested in finding information, plus, you know, some comps with explanations from top players. If you want to stay up to date on latest content, please consider subscribing. And if you want to see me play live, check me out on Twitch. With that being said, take care, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.